"Welcome to Secret Story. I think I'm the only girl here, and I don't think you would like to kiss each other," Kelly replied, as she took a sip of wine from her glass. "I think just having a laugh and listening to music will do, man," Davy agreed with Lee, and Kelly nodded as she looked around the room, still with one arm around Johnny's neck, glancing at the man. She had never noticed before how attractive he actually was. She had always seen him as Jerry's friend. Now she was beginning to see why so many girls found him so hot. "Alright, I've got one. Do you remember the time that you?" Lee began, and so did the conversation. Soon, the whole room was filled with laughter, banter, and stories. While music played in the background, Kelly joined in the conversation every now and then, not drinking much of the wine she still had in the glass. However, after about 10 minutes she looked back to Johnny and suddenly noticed that his hand still feeling that tingling fire inside her stomach. Kelly smiled playfully at him as the others talked, and she spoke quietly. "Naughty boy," she chided playfully. Johnny simply grinned, probably at the fact that she hadn't told him not to, though at that moment she didn't realize that she hadn't, and Kelly smiled at him a moment longer before turning back to the conversation. The talking, and laughing, continued for a little while longer. And this time Kelly joined in a little more she could better join in. However, as the conversation continued, and a few moments had passed, Jerry's friend spoke from behind her. "You dance really well, Kel," he whispered softly into Kelly's ear, feeling a shiver run down her spine at the sensation. Kelly smiled and felt her heart beat faster. "Thanks," was all she managed to get out, and that a little breathlessly. She could feel Johnny's smile as he once more "I'd like to see you dance again," he whispered softly into her ear again. Everything else in the room seemed not to exist to Kelly at that moment, though she was sure everyone was still talking. "Jerry's your friend, and my boyfriend. I don't think he'd like me to dance for you again," she replied, her voice a little more breathless. "I know, hot isn't it?" he replied softly, sounding completely unconcerned. Another surge ran down Kelly's spine, and she let a deep breath escape her mouth. Her eyes wanted to drift shut, her breathing quickened. And his words deepened Kelly's breathing. Any thought of her boyfriend was long out of her head, and then suddenly, whoa. "Looks like Johnny's found something fun to do," Kelly heard Ian exclaim. Some part of her expected someone, perhaps Lee, to stop what was going on. After a moment standing in front of 5 of her boyfriend's friends, from the waist down, Kelly watched intently as Johnny before once more sitting on the couch as he had been before. Kelly's eyes widened as her eyes fixed on Johnny's. It was strange, as it was only at that moment that Kelly Henderson realized that what Johnny had said was actually going to happen, and so, although she was still in a daze, she spoke. Whatever willpower Kelly had had was now gone. The only other thought was that it was Jerry's own fault for being an idiot. None of this would have happened if he had been here. "Man, I can't believe," Ian exclaimed, as were the others, eyes were fixed intently on the scene before them, their friend's girlfriend and boyfriend's friends, in their lounge, while her boyfriend, their friend, wasn't here, wondering where her boyfriend was. "And if he would be back soon. I can't believe we're doing this." "Well, we are, baby," Johnny said with a mixture of triumph and self-assured arrogance. Kelly had heard he could get in any girl he focused on, even her it seemed. The other guys stared intently as they watched their friends, and was the only one to not know what was going on. Johnny grinned in triumph once more, cheating on Jerry. While all of his friends watched, and he was out, angry, and oblivious to what she was doing. All the one-time faithful girlfriend could think of was how good this felt. Little did the girlfriend know, that her night had just begun. He had said he wouldn't, but then, he had something else in mind. Something that would make this a memory that he, and Kelly, would never, ever forget. Jerry was walking the streets, still lost in an irritated anger. Taking a deep swig from his bottle, finishing the last of the lager from it, he tossed it aside into the bushes, not caring where it landed or if it smashed. That only made his mood darker, as now he had nothing to drink either. Great. And so, in an ever-darkening mood, he continued to walk on, looking for somewhere that fit his current frame of mind. Meanwhile, back at his and Kelly's house, Jerry was unaware that his girlfriend, as he walked on, he was clueless that his friends were watching another of his friends, and right then Kelly wouldn't have cared if Jerry had walked in and saw her. Slowly her senses came back enough for Kelly to realize. The extremely satisfied girlfriend smiled a deeply fulfilled smile. "Would someone get me a tissue please, I seem to be a mess," she asked amusedly, and heard someone in the room laugh, although she wasn't sure who. Before long Davy arrived, handing her a tissue, which she smiled and thanked him for. "That was awesome," Johnny said. Kelly smiled at that. She didn't know how else to reply really. While at first it had seemed kind of revolting, she wouldn't mind that again. She thought, "Jerry sure is lucky to have a girlfriend like you, Kel," Johnny added with a deeper smugness to his grin. Strangely enough, Kelly didn't feel bad for. She was a little more sober now, however. She did not feel any remorse at all. Johnny had satisfied her better than she could have imagined, and it was still her boyfriend's fault. The whole situation wouldn't have come up if he hadn't have walked out in a huff like a spoilt child. Kelly was about to reply to Johnny when suddenly Davy walked around in front of her and offered her his hand. Taking it, she smiled at him as he helped her up. She was about to thank him when surprise took her for a moment in front of them all. There was no point in being all reserved with the others now. It was then that she realized that she was going to all 5 of her boyfriend's friends. The thought sent a shock through her for a brief moment. 5 guys who were not her boyfriend, but his friends, in her and Jerry's own home while he could come back at any time. She could just imagine the smugness and images each would feel and see when they jested with Jerry in his moods next time. All of this suddenly flashed through her. Suddenly Jerry sat in the bar staring at the half-empty glass of lager in front of him. He looked towards the phone at the other end of the bar for what seemed like the 100th time. However, he decided for the 100th time that he wasn't going to use it. He had left his own phone at the house, and he wasn't going to go back there to get it. However, a thought suddenly calmed it, and a slow smug smile gradually spread on his face. The guys no doubt would have gone home after he left, and Kelly would probably be in a mood with him for a while, but she'd soon calm down. The thought made him smile as he picked up his drink once more. Little did he know that the guys had not, in fact, gone home. Just then, she lifted her head just in time to see Ian stand up on the couch without hesitation. Kelly reached forward. That stunningly girlfriend of 3 years did not know who this guy was. All she knew was that Jerry knew him and that he had come over tonight. She had never met him before in her life. Oh, and she knew that Jerry didn't seem to like the guy for some reason. A small beep was heard, and Kelly looked once more to Ian, who was holding his phone towards her. Ian exclaimed excitedly, before he put his phone away. "I'll make sure you all get a copy of that, and the photo." Kelly laughed lightly to herself at that. "I wonder where he is?" Johnny asked. "Who cares, speaking of which?" he added, before he took her hand, helping her up. Surprisingly, he led her into the kitchen and helped her up so that she was sitting on the green felt on the poker table. Looking around, as she realized that Ian had sat her on the side where Jerry had been sitting a couple of hours earlier, looking at him, she smiled. Jerry watched the sports on the television in the bar, trying to ignore the old, strange-smelling drunk that was trying to talk to him. He intended to watch the end of the next show, something he had wanted to see and been waiting for, before he began to make his way back to his house. Kelly would likely be in bed now. They'd talk about everything tomorrow, and by the nighttime everything would be square. Chuckling to himself at his genius, Jerry slammed the shooter glass down and called for one more. Meanwhile, back in his own kitchen, his rival was Lon. As Jerry continued to watch the game, he loved the fact this guy's girlfriend in the guy's own house, but what he liked more than that was what he had planned for after. "Who do you belong to?" he demanded. "You. Please. Please," pleasure only his rival could. Chips and cards lay all over the floor as the table shook and shimmied. The sight that confronted him was a dream. Ian congratulated himself on deciding to come over tonight. He had only planned on jibing Jerry, but things had worked out much better. Kelly could barely hold herself up. She couldn't describe, sudden ly she vaguely heard, "For I the glass, when you look at Jerry again, you can always remember his girlfriend doing this with your," she said in a tired. Ian grinned proudly and arrogantly. However, as Kelly held out her hands for the glass, he shook his head. "Not now, my dear, this is for later," he said, as he offered her a hand to help her up. Kelly eyed him quizzically. However, she didn't push it further. It was just lucky that Jerry hadn't come back yet. Looking around the room, her eyes fell on the muscular frame of Jerry's black friend, Simon. Kelly had never had a black man before. Well, why don't we try? Kelly purred back, where do you want me? Smiling a mischievous smile, Simon walked over and took her hand, his large dark-skinned hand enveloping hers. Come with me, white girl, he said in his deep voice, as calmly as if he was taking her to see a new car or something. Kelly followed Simon, not knowing where he was going to take her. Calmly, Simon led her out of the lounge, the others following eagerly behind. Calmly, he led her upstairs by the hand, and Kelly was surprised with what he asked next. Which one is yours and Jerry's bedroom? He asked just as calmly. Kelly felt her heart beat faster as she pointed toward their room, and then followed as Simon led her in by her hand gently. Simon's smile deepened, and Kelly heard Ian exclaim his approval and no doubt fumble for his camera phone. Simon simply grinned, his teeth flashing white. Jerry finished his last drink as the program he had wanted to watch finished, and so he stood and walked out of the bar. Walking out into the warmth of the night air, the oblivious boyfriend couldn't help but smile to himself, all of the earlier irritation having left him after the long time he had been out. He was looking forward to getting back and seeing Kelly. Flakes of plaster fell from the ceiling as the wall continued to be assaulted, and so, over and over again. Promise me, Kelly said softly to Lee, promise me that you'll me again. Lee nodded. Inside me, was all Kelly said finally, taking a moment to catch her breath and smiling playfully at him. I think we better go downstairs, she said softly, opening the door completely. He made his way out of the doorway a little. Kelly watched him confusedly as Lee seemed to wave his hands about as if he were turning something. Kelly watched quizzically until she heard Jerry laugh as the music came on. Lee turned to grin playfully at her, and Kelly smiled just as wickedly back. In seconds the headboard was banging the wall. All while the bedroom door was open, and Jerry sat on the stairs a few feet away. As planned, the music disguised after their last, he made his way downstairs. Kelly lay on the bed a moment. Making her way downstairs, she walked into the lounge. Her jeans still lay in the puddle. Come back from your huff now, baby, she couldn't help but ask, as she sat on the couch in between Lee and Simon. Yeah, needed a break, you know. Jerry added as calm as she knew he'd be when he got back. The guys have been telling me they had a good night though, that you entertained them well. Kelly smiled and laughed lightly, and then nodded as Ian came over to hand her a wine glass. She noticed it was the glass filled with his from earlier. However, Jerry still didn't seem to notice that. He must have been drinking when he was out. I think we entertained each other, babe, she replied as she watched Jerry, and raised the glass to her lips. She understood now about why Ian wanted to keep it till later. What a way to end a night like this. Smiling wickedly to herself, Kelly finished what she was going to say. It's been a long night, babe, a lot of fun but really tiring, although, I think I'm ready for bed now, babe, I've had my fill of them all for tonight, I think, she said with a playful smile for all of the men in room. With those words Kelly raised the glass to her lips. Kelly simply smiled, satisfied. It had been an unexpected night. But now she felt so much better, and now there was no way she would ever give this up again. The end.